Not terribly important, but it is, the city really depends, the day-to-day operations of the city really depend on that information. Now, what's being added to it currently is some health-related information. AIDS patients may be able to go and call, find out where the nearest clinic is. Now it becomes health-related information. Imagine, what happens if this information gets lost. Obviously, it's a big issue. Access NYC is another one of our applications. Maybe you have seen that ad on the subway. It's basically an application for somebody to go and get screened for public service, whether they can get food stamps, whether they can get welfare, whether it's lots of personal information gets put into that application. Forms are being submitted, financial information, a lot of important information is there. Obviously it's PII. Recently, now you're able to add to submit applications for subsidized school lunches. If you don't want somebody to hack in and basically create many people receiving food stamps that are not supposed to be receiving food stamps. There was a big deal in HRA a couple of years ago where people were giving Medicaid cards that weren't supposed to get Medicaid cards. Some people, they lost their jobs. Somebody was able to hack into the system, create these false accounts, were a big problem. So, basically, these and lots of similar other applications that we have to deal with. There's about, 20, 30 applications that are in the queue in a given time. So what do we do to actually secure it all? How do we secure it? And David is going to talk about the actual process that we use.
So, big picture, the City Information Security Program has 5 elements. You have infrastructure operations, which is one of my groups, the firewall operators, the VPN guys, the spam guys, operations, they're in the trenches. Engineering and design, which this accreditation process falls under. We're supposed to really be taking a long look at technology and do the plan and design, and then operations as they implement and operate. But, so there's engineering piece. There's standards and policy development, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, which is incredibly key to this whole process, but developing standards and policies. Enterprise directory and identity management. This is one area which, depending on what outside of government, depending on what commercial organization you go to, you see LDAP and identity management spread around depending on I guess, who's actually interested in running it. It tends to be very esoteric, but it's very critical to the City of New York. We have a centralized LDAP repository, which the idea is to push one single identity for everybody. So I don't need a million IDs for a million systems. I have one ID, and we all talk to this directory, and it's very powerful, and it actually solves a lot of problems. So that falls under the CISO for the city, which is where we work. And then finally, the application accreditation process. So the idea behind the process came about 1.5 years ago, when the commissioner of our agency said, you know what, there's lots of rules, they're not very well written, there's lots of applications coming online, we seem to always be hitting snags when we're trying to force an application or a system developer to build or to comply with our stuff. So he wanted us to try to build something. So the idea behind the process is a defined process, defined standards. We go through this whole process, and at the end of it, you get a little accreditation letter from us that says you meet all of our stuff, all of our requirements. Or on the flip side, you didn't meet our requirements, and therefore you're not being accredited. And I guess if anything bad ever happens, that would be an indicator of who's actually going to get thrown out the window. But so there's a number of key elements of this process. Number one are clearly defined policies and standards. In around 2000, the city hired a bunch of consultants. No offense to any consultants in the room, but hired a bunch of consultants to go and write a bunch of policies for us. And your average policy was about 14 to 20 pages. It had a mixture of standards, policies, guidelines, history, some comics thrown in there, some art. It was a complete mess, completely unusable, completely unreadable, and you could tell based on the problems that we were having. So the manager in charge of that at the time was given this task of blowing it away and starting from scratch. And to make it even more effective, we said, you know what, let's go and get stakeholders from every major city agency. Actually, any city agency who wanted could their security officers could come and be part of this process. Because in 2000, the policies were created, thrown out there, and said, "Ye shall comply." Now we have all these security officers, if they want to join, and put their and sit around a table and say, and let them develop these policies and these standards. So what does that mean? They can't turn around and say, "Oh, I didn't, I'm not buying into that. I didn't create that." Well, yeah, you did. You were sitting at the table when we developed these, or yeah, you chose to not come to these meetings, and it's actually been working really well. So your average policy, and you can actually see them on NYC.gov. You can see a bunch of them, NYC.gov/infosec. They're on average 2 pages long. There's lots of white space, lots of big letters, and they're very clear. Clearly defined what you have to do to comply with policy. And that, again, changes the whole ballgame, because you can't say anymore that this stuff is unreadable. It's very readable, very usable. Another thing we did, Do It has a lot of security controls built throughout the city's network. There's a lot of them. It's a big city, it's a big network. You have to be able to, when you're building applications, you have to really be able to understand how all these interrelate so that your system doesn't violate policy and our standards. But it was only in a couple people's heads. So this was a pretty heavy-duty process. There's about a 14 or 15-page document that describes every security control at a very high level, how it works, and so that you can take that information, and when you're trying to build something, you have an idea of it, so you're not going to conflict with it. Again, a very critical piece of information, because again, someone comes to you and say, "Well, I don't know how your stuff works." Here you go. It's full color, and it's very usable. We also partnered with the budget office and the PMO, project management office, because this stuff, no one was going to come to us and say, "Hey, I'm developing a new application," unless they were forced to. So we built this relationship where, now when budget goes, or someone comes to budget and say, "I want $2 million to build an app," budget turns around to us and says, "Hey, do you guys know about this application?" And then we jump on in and make their day a little harder. And the same thing with project management. If there's a mayoral project and money just gets allocated, again, there's a project manager that's hopefully going to get assigned to this. He's going to call us up and say, "By the way, I just got assigned to another application. You guys know about it." And so it's very critical, because we need snitches. People are going to find a way to get this stuff done if we don't know about it. Another important thing we've done, all these contracts, because when the city develops something very, very big, they go out and get a system integrator to build it for them. In all the contracts and task orders that go out there now, it clearly says you must comply with citywide information security policy. You must comply with the accreditation or your application must pass the accreditation process. It's there. It's in the legal language, so that when they come in, they're coming in full faith, and they know that if they're not doing it, they're going to be held. They're in violation of a contract. Again, something very critical. Something that the federal government's trying to do now also. We also use tools. We use host scanning tools for host vulnerabilities, and we use application scanning tools to try to find the low-hanging fruit. Application security tools really can't dig super deep, but they find a majority of the risk that's out there, and again, we find that very useful for us. On top of all this, on top of all the groups I'm responsible for and all the documentation that Roman and other people on the team have to read, we also have to stay ahead of the curve on technology. The city's buildings, some of the buildings might be archaic and dingy, but we're using technology that is cutting edge. VoIP, SOA, Web 2.0, application integration, all kinds of big stuff. We're on it and we're using it because we're trying to solve big problems. And we have to learn about it, because a perfect example is SOA, service-oriented architecture, and web services. We had an application one day that was going to use this stuff. We had no idea what it was. So it took us 3 months. We dug around. We met with the people who were developing this stuff, and we actually ended